Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another great episode. For today, we have a very special guest, and I'm very excited to have this gentleman over here and to share his wisdom, his inspiration, and his experience, on this earth and everything that he has and continues to unfold. And it's a true honor to have him here. Welcome, everybody. Zach, I'm gonna butcher your name. Is it Blakeney?
You got it, bro.
Okay,
You got
okay.
it,
If you
man.
wouldn't mind just doing a quick little intro for our audience,
Sure.
so they can get to know you a little bit, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I have been working with leaders and entrepreneurs for the past 3 years or so, and I'm going to kind of work backwards from present to going backwards. And that's been an incredible experience, bringing consciousness. We can call it spirituality. To me, everything is spiritual, right? So this is all just energy that's been formed into different things that we get to communicate with each other through, language and whatever else that's coming through. I mean, it's just this massive conglomerate slash infinite thing, right? That we
Mm-hmm.
find ourselves in, and we are a finite form inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that, it's just an interesting thing to really sit back and say, well, for the last 3 years, I've had the honor to bring this type of perspective, which is kind of a higher perspective to leaders, and having them start to understand some of the things that are just transpiring in the collective. Uh, some of those things are just vibration. It's vibrations that are coming through that are of a higher vibrational sense, like a higher laboratory rate, is what we can say. And these vibrations have been measured by science. You can look at different emotions that vibrate at different hertz. So, I mean, we've also science has come to understand that physics and metaphysics and quantum physics and all this is just the study of energy, and that really the real world is the unseen world. It's what we can't see.
Mm-hmm.
So what we can't see is real, and I'll do a little distinction here with this, where when we look at the physical reality, or what we call reality, there's some things that we can say that kind of identify it. Like one, it could be measurable, right? You can look at the microphone in front of you and say, well, this is measurable, right? There's a beginning, there's an end, I can see it. The next thing, it's agreeable. Right. So I can agree that that's a microphone because you're speaking into it. It makes sense. It's reasonable. So that's the next thing. It's reasonable that we'd be on a podcast, there'd be a microphone there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's physical, right? So we see this physical thing. So we can look at this and say, okay, well, here's this microphone. It has all of these things that we can agree upon. It's reasonable, it's physical, it's measurable. It must be real, except for the fact that it's the effect of something. And if it's the effect of something, then there has to be something that's the cause, because law of cause and effect, principle of cause and effect tells us this to be true. So what's the cause? Well, then we start diving into that. Well, the cause must be not physical, not measurable, not reasonable, not agreeable. And then I have people that I'll work with, like, what could those things be? Well, they could say, well, it's a thought. Well, kind of, except for a thought can be measurable. I can think
Mm-hmm.
about how long I think. So
Yeah.
I dive them down into, well, what is it? Well, it's experience. So experience is real. And our experience happens in our body. Our experience essentially is aligned with an emotion, right? So joy is an experience. You can have an experience of joy inside yourself. Fear is an experience. Shame is an experience. So this is where I guess I talk about emotions in a different way. A lot of people talk about emotions. They say, oh, emotions can be controlled. And I'm like, yeah, they can be, but also whatever you control, you fear getting out of control. So ultimately, whatever you're trying to control gets out of control. It's unsustainable. And also that's you trying to control experience. So the reason why I go this way is that we get so lost in the physical realm, right? And thinking that what we perceive to be real around us is what is. And really, it's an illusion. And it's amenable. It's shiftable. It's changeable based off of the willpower that we bring every single day to create, and really feeling like we're coming from our heart, that power versus force. So I know I went on a tangent, and I went there because to me it's so incredibly important for leaders to start looking at reality from a truthful lens, from the lens of what is real, and understand that they are the creator, and we are all the creators or co-creator, we could say, of the reality that we find ourselves in. And until we come to this point, until we realize that we are not victimized by anything but our own belief systems and our own perceptions, our own mind, then we're not going to be able to truly live that fulfilling, happy, loving, successful life, the thing that we want. Because if not, then we're always a victim of something else, and victims have been raising victims for generations.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised by people in victim consciousness, my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know any better. I didn't even know what victim consciousness was until recently. That's what I'm saying. Like, we're having this massive collective awakening to this. Like, this is all happening.
Yep.
So it's just my passion to bring that into the leadership space, into the business space, and really start to shifting business, right? To start to align with more of creation rather than an energy of enslavement. And what I say, I don't say business is slavery, but it's an energy of enslavement, of control, of force.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach, for that. I really appreciate that. That's a really powerful words and great points there. And you're absolutely right, and it's something that it's so important because if we think about businesses, right, and leaders. I mean, that is the driving force of the economic system, but it's beyond that. It also creates culture, right?
Mhm.
We spend the majority, of time, those of us who are entrepreneurs, it's a little different, but even still, when we eventually start creating a team, we create a culture, right?
Mhm.
So the importance of a leader is paramount. It's extremely important because we spend so much time going to work to places, right? And we pick up on whatever the leadership is there.
Mhm.
So if there's a strong leadership that has good principles, a strong baseline and foundation, not only is that going to have an effect on the business, but on the culture, which ultimately has an effect on people's lives. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really go
Okay. I'm
ahead.
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're good.
I was just going to say there's three qualities that I guide leaders to lead with, which is love, integrity, and transparency. And these are kind of the characteristics of this higher density of consciousness or laboratory rate, vibration, whatever we want to call it,
Hmm.
that's coming through. And we can actually see it throughout the collective. So we can see transparency happening throughout the collective. We can see the corruption being brought forward. We can see people that are no longer want to tolerate their suffering. Essentially, they're not hiding things anymore. Matter of fact, the more that you try and hide something inside of yourself, the more you suffer.
Hmm.
So we're starting to understand that because hiding is just a symptom of shame. So if we're hiding something, a part of ourselves, we're shameful about it, then the suffering occurs. Integrity being a huge one,
Mm.
because most people don't realize how out of integrity they actually are.
Yep.
And when I say this, it's at a baseline of integrity, I like to describe integrity as the integrity of a bridge. Meaning that if I'm going to drive my car across the bridge, I want to know that the bridge is going to support me. So that's like, can I count on this bridge? So can I count on other people to do what they say they're going to do in the time that they say they're going to do it?
Hmm.
But even more so, can I count on myself to be that?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is where the direct the number one driver of results comes from integrity. If I always did what I said I was going to do, right, then I would get the result that I'm looking to get. But a lot of times we commit to something and then also we end up succumbing to our reasons and our excuses and our circumstances to why we're not going to follow through that with that commitment. Well, what do we get in return? Well, we get in return the excuse.
Right.
So I'm working with a lot of businesses or business owners. Like, I come in and I say, hey guys, like, you got your own operational standards. I'm not here to change your operational standards. Like, I'm here to look at how you operate your operational standards
Mm.
because you're the operator.
Right.
So where is this coming from? And then the last leg of integrity, if we get even deeper, it's talking about integrity to who we really are, authenticity.
Mm.
Are you in integrity to your ego?
Mm.
Or which is ultimately you can be, but many times our ego leads us astray. Or are you in integrity to your spirit, your soul, what it wants? Because that's the key to truly, truly creating a life from that space of power, rather than the force of the ego.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very powerful. It's really, really powerful. And I feel like would you agree that my perspective has been since COVID, right? That COVID really kind of opened up this initial opportunity for people to, especially those in leaderships or, CEO, C-level folks, to say, hey, I'm getting to know parts about myself, about my life, because I'm having to sit here with it. Also, I'm understanding how maybe out of tune I've been with my career or as showing up as a leader. And now all these things are surfacing and they're trying to, essentially pivot from how we used to do things
Mhm.
into a new way of doing it because everybody has felt it, right? From COVID, I feel like it was a lot of people started waking up. A lot of people started to realize, to have a conscious awareness of their life and their impact, the impact they were playing not only in their lives but also in their society, in the world. And so do you feel that that's initially what has created this new way of leading, this new way of doing business?
Yeah, I think it's a part of this massive shift that we all experienced because it was infringement. It was a mass level infringement. And infringement is when we push up against our free will to choose. So there are two, I guess you can say, expressions of unity, of oneness that we can experience, that we all experience as human beings. One is the observer. We all have the ability to observe our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, our reality. Um, what we know to be real wouldn't exist unless we could observe it to be there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is free will, that we are all born with a free will choice, our God-given birthright to choose and create our life unimpeded. Now, unimpeded is the key word there because that's what infringement is. So what happened around the world, especially in America, is that we had an idea of what freedom is.
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID happened, and then we were told to shelter in place. And then, sure, over those 2 months, people got faced with a lot of their shadows. They got faced with the things they've been avoiding in their life. But also, there was something that wasn't right. We were being forced against our will to do something that we didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that occur in your life, when infringement happens against free will, the first thing that happens is you become curious. Well, why is this way? Is this really the right way to do things? Are we really being forced to go into our homes? Can I really not go and, hug my friend? Like, what is this? This doesn't feel right, right? And then when we say feel right, it's not an emotional feeling, it's intuitive feeling. So it's that free, it's your soul. It's the thing that's
Yeah.
running this thing. So when the soul wakes up, and we experience either a abiding awakening or a non-abiding awakening, whatever that might be, which is a non-abiding as it happens temporarily, and you kind of go back into the matrix. Abiding as you wake up, you're like, okay, there's something here. Then the curiosity has us start exploring. Right. So we start exploring like different parts of ourselves. We start exploring and questioning the societal matrix that we find ourselves in. We start questioning our leadership, our government, like all these different things. And that questioning, that energy of questioning results in more things becoming uncovered. So here's transparency showing up again, right? And how this is all intertwined and working together. So that's really the biggest thing that's happened. And then in 2021, we had the Great Resignation, which was 50 million workers that had left the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And there were three reasons for it, like the top three reasons. There was more than three, but the top three: number one, not enough pay; number two, not enough opportunity for advancement; number three, they felt disrespected at work. And if I look at those three, there's only one that I believe is actually the cause, which is being disrespected at work.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're disrespected at work, then why would you want opportunity for advancement and pay in a culture or environment which you're disrespected? And the ultimate disrespect you can do to somebody else is to take away from their ability to choose. And that is a lot of what business has been built off of: expectations, and it's been built off of um, corruption. It's been built off of criticism, right, of the employees when they don't do what they're supposed to do. It's just been built off of, again, this energy of enslavement rather than co-creating. and how powerful it would be if everybody just woke up to creation and what would happen in our lives, what would happen with the world once that occurs, right? And we're in the process of that happening. We're in the process of layers being stripped off of us that aren't real,
Mhm.
right? The illusions that the ego created, the identity that it created, and more of our soul is coming forward in the rightful place as the operator of this mind and body.
100%, brother. Amen to that. Because I think that it's part of evolution, right? If we see how we have evolved as humans, we're pretty young in the scheme of things. If you really look at the how old the universe, at least to our knowledge, is, and even our Earth, we haven't been around that long, and
Yeah.
I think even a million years is nothing in comparison to the age of the universe. But I love to see how we have evolved and how we have changed and how things have changed for us, the way we express ourselves, the way we are aware of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And the number one thing that I think, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but the number one thing that I feel like in my journey that I've seen and experienced is just the realization of honor, right? Of honoring yourself,
Mhm.
of saying, hey, I'm no longer gonna do what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I used to work for Google, for a corporate, and I thought, oh, this is like my dream job, but it didn't feel right. And I
Yeah.
knew I had a choice, right? I'm like, I'm either gonna put my head down and just shake this feeling that I have, internal, like deep feeling of wanting to do something else, but not knowing what that was. And I said, I'm either gonna put my head down, I'm just gonna do this. This is a fantastic job. I could be set for life, or I'm gonna explore this. I'm gonna honor myself in whatever this is and be brave enough to look into it. And that's what I did, and I feel like that was the stepping stone into freedom, into being able to express myself, to then continuing to honor myself in various different ways in which I felt like it was fulfilling my soul, it was fulfilling my time here on this
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah, and I love the word honor. I mean, I use it all the time. You'll hear me say it's my honor, right? And that's for me, that's the recognition that I have the opportunity to live my purpose. And then for honoring myself, that's learning how to love and accept all parts of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, we we've built this whole societal matrix in the West based off of a masculine principle, a masculine energy that the mind or the ego is more associated with.
Mm-hmm.
And through that process, the ego is of separation, and meaning that we're separate from other people, we're separate from the divine, from God, we're separate from the universe. And also, it creates lack, because if we're separate, then we also lack something. We're not whole. So a lot of what I bring into people's awareness about is what wholeness really is, and that it really is our natural state is wholeness. But we fracture our own wholeness by not wanting to accept, or by resisting, parts of ourselves that we don't want to integrate, or that we have a perception of shame and guilt and regrets around from our past. And through that process, we end up eliminating the possibility to be our absolute highest version of ourselves. So if you think about this, I always use the yin and yang symbol as the ultimate symbol for wholeness, is that you have the black side and you have the white side, right? And this is just going to be a very basic look at this. So that just shows us that there are two rivaling forces in the universe, the black side and the white side, and then the whole thing is a circle. Well, if you have black and white in front of you, and then you take away black, what do you have?
White.
Well, do you have white? What do you have it to compare to?
It's just black. Yeah.
But there's no black, right? And so if it's white, I took away black, now there's just white, but all there is white, then what do we have?
Right. Same thing, just white.
Well, we wouldn't. What do we have to compare to? Again, see here we go. This
Right.
is where it can go. So what do we have it to compare to?
It just is.
It just is, right? So we could say
Yeah.
it's nothing. It's either
Mhm.
everything or it's nothing, but we don't know what it is because there's nothing to compare it to. So now if I put unworthiness and worthiness up and say,
Mhm.
okay, if I take away worthiness, or if I take away unworthiness, what do I have?
Right.
Someone might say worthiness, but I was like, but you have nothing to compare it to. So what do you really have? You have
R-
nothing.
Right.
So our mind wants to direct us to saying, I'm not unworthy, I'm worthy.
Mhm.
But then we're working, and behind the work is this tinge of frustration, is this tinge of not feeling like I'm working enough, not feeling like I'm doing enough. And it's so wild because people don't realize that when you say I'm not doing enough, you're essentially saying you're not worthy. Anything of saying I'm not enough, whether it's attached to doing or being or feeling or whatever else, there's something that you're not good enough at what this is. So to live in a space of wholeness is to accept that I'm both unworthy and worthy.
Mhm.
That inside of this, if I can look at this and I can use my observation skills and I can say, okay, I'm experiencing right now a feeling of being unworthy, of not being good enough. That no matter what I do, it just doesn't seem to be enough. Everybody's had that rhetoric.
Mhm.
Well, instead of just pushing it to the side and saying, I don't want to feel that, I allow myself to experience it. And science has showed us now that it takes about 90 seconds for an emotion to pass if you just bring your attention to it. I'm going to experience it. Once I experience it, I say, okay, well, I experienced unworthiness, and now I'm going to bring out the other possibility of worthiness. Okay, now I have unworthiness and worthiness in front of me. What do I choose? I choose worthiness. Okay, so my choice has been activated in my creation of worthiness, and now let me move forward in what I'm doing throughout the day, whatever it might be. So this is just kind of bringing anyone that's listening down a pathway of saying it doesn't make logical sense to your ego mind, because your ego mind says, well, and even then the spiritual ego can take some, well, I don't want to manifest being unworthy, so I'm not going to focus on being unworthy, except for the fact that it's running in the background all the time.
Mhm.
Just because you're not focused on it doesn't mean you're not experiencing it. And that goes back to the first thing we are talking about. Like if you have an experience, then be with the experience. It's the
Mhm.
highs and lows. It's the EKG monitor that says that we're alive. We have our highs, we have our lows. And then after
Mhm.
you have that experience, then choose into what it is that you want to create from that point.
Yep, absolutely. And these words are so powerful, and these are things that you and I, we both understand. And I feel like we understand this because we have experienced it, and we are experiencing it, right? We allowed ourselves to have the awareness to discover that possibility and that perspective, right? But I want to invite our listeners, or rather ask you something.
Sure.
If you're not here, if everything you just heard, you're just having a hard time with it, right? um I always say you can hear to a million podcasts, you can watch a million YouTube videos, read a billion books, but if you don't do anything with that information, and if you're just not truly open to just listening, to
Mhm.
just discovering it, exploring it, then it's a waste of time, because it's just information, right? So for you, you've been on this journey, obviously, to have this perspective that you have now. What would you say is the number one most important thing to take action on if you're beginning, if you're a beginner on this, if you are trying to grasp this idea, other than surrender, right? But what would you suggest?
Well, a really valuable tool for me has been meditation.
Mm.
I mean, just if I was going to start anywhere and you're having difficulty connecting with your inner voice or your spirit, or if you even maybe you don't understand the duality that you're not your mind, that might be a great place to start. Is
Absolutely.
just start to realize that, I mean, we're conditioned to believe that we are who we are, and that our mind is who we are as well, unless you're born into somebody that, parents that already knew this information, but most parents don't know that information, especially not in the West. So the majority of my suffering came from uh, being addicted to porn, being addicted to drugs, getting a divorce, and like all of that coming head for me to uh my soul saying that this isn't who I am, but my mind experiencing so much suffering from the experiences that I had of basically having it in control, so to speak, of my actions and my thoughts and my behaviors. That once I was able to detach from my mind and move into the observer and say, okay, wait a second, just because I'm thinking a thought that says I'm a terrible human being doesn't mean that's true.
Mm. Mhm.
So meditation is a wonderful tool to practice this detachment, where you can just kind of sit quietly and observe what's happening in your thought process. Meditation is not about sitting 20 minutes without thoughts. It's about the ups and downs. I'm thinking, now it's peaceful, now I'm thinking, now it's peaceful, and having the practice of observation. Because again, observation and choice are two characteristics of the divine. So if I can observe my thoughts and say, oh, this is saying I'm a terrible human being, okay, what's another possibility? Another possibility is that I'm a great man doing incredible things.
Mhm.
What do I choose?
Right.
I choose to be a great man doing incredible things. So let me continue to do that.
Mm.
So that's very simple. That's just I understand what you were saying in a sense of like, here's all these things and whatnot. But like, if you were just to think about two words, I can observe and I can choose. I can observe and I can choose. Then through that process, you now have gotten to the center point of operating this monkey, this animal that you find yourself, because that is the point in which creation happens.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, by the way, for that personal perspective. I can totally relate to kind of getting to a breaking point, right? Which we then it's like you've known some of us, we know what we're supposed to be doing or what we should be doing rather, what we should honor ourselves to do what we are desiring inside of us, whether it's to eat healthier, work out, or be brave enough to be ourselves or discover ourselves, whatever it may be. I
Mhm.
feel like we all have at least some sort of awareness. And if it's not there, I feel like eventually you do reach some sort of a break point where I call it the opportunity. It will present itself where it's like, okay, you hit rock bottom in some way, shape, or form. And now comes the opportunity. The universe, consciousness, God, whatever you believe in, will say, you have a choice. You can continue to repeat this cycle, be in this cycle, or you can choose to change it. It's
Yeah.
not going to be easy. And I know I bring this up because it goes back to programming essentially also, right? It's because I feel like a lot of people have a hard time stepping into evolution, stepping into expansion, into growth because it feels uncomfortable. And that I feel like is the seed of it, that we build a world where, again, this is related to the ego, of course, of safety, of comfortable. Everything from our homes, the car, everything is built for comfort. Everything is built for you to, not have to worry. And we devote so much energy and to having safety, right?
Mhm.
So that when we step into a emotional uncomfortable position or a psychological or physical space, right, which they're all very related no matter
Yeah.
what, um, we have that resistance because we have been programmed. Our mind is used to, hey, let's keep it safe, you know
Yeah.
and so I bring this up because for the next thing that I like to talk to you, picking back what you just said about meditation, is um, having an open mind is the only way that I feel like you can really give yourself the opportunity to choose something differently,
Mhm.
right? And it's that awareness of you're saying about the ego, and is like if you don't have that relationship with yourself, if you can't be truthful to yourself, right? I mean, nobody else knows you better than you,
Yeah.
right? Then if you're lying to yourself, you're trying to convince yourself for something that inside of you it's not true, then how can you show up as a father, as a business, as a CEO, as anywhere else in life, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it all ultimately it is easy. It's all about choice.
Mhm.
But it's about being brave, right? Enough to take the choices that don't feel maybe the most comfortable. I'll have all of the information for you to reach out to Zack if you wish to connect with him in the description of this podcast and on the video. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, brother. It was my honor.